We were reading the book of Samuel today about David going to see a king. But Saul was being a little sneaky snake, and there was someone who was on Team Saul. I took Saul's G card that day. Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 21. And I already read this, but I'll read it again. Okay. Yes. Okay. Then came David to Nob, to Amalek the priest, and Amalek was afraid that meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Amalek the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee. Because real G's move in silence like lasagna. You get it? The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee. And what I have commanded thee, and I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread of my hand, and what there is present. And I remember I took communion that day, that first Sunday that I met that king. Good man. Okay. And the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under mine hand, but there is hallowed bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And I remember going there and I said, and I realized how symbolic, the communion is. You should be taking bread you should be taking communion that's delicious, communion that blesses your soul, communion that you're excited to see. Like, I really believe that churches should get really good bread, so people are like, oh, it's communion day, we get that good bread today, that good bread, that favorite bread from that good baker that knows Jesus and that blesses his sheep. So I was having that conversation with my dad after, because it was good. I mean, it was wafers, but they were good wafers. They weren't like the waxy wafers. It was decent communion that day. But anyways, and the priest answered David and said, There is no common bread under my hand, but there is hallowed bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And I remember I went to that church, and they held they were soldiers, but I mean, for my dad and my brother, they held open the door, and for some reason when I tried to walk through the door, they closed it. And my dad corrected them. He said, That's a lady, you need to treat ladies well. And I remember the girls in the church were very, very quiet. They kept to themselves. They weren't some of them were confident, but the ranks were messed up. There were some that were really, really quiet, and one that were too confident and overbearing and trying to interrupt officers while they were speaking. And I noticed, I looked at the table, and they had the flyers for the boys, and they were on sturdy paper, printed on real sturdy paper on the left. And I saw the flyers for the girls, and they were printed on computer paper, and they were kind of drooping over, and they weren't standing tall and confident. And I always look for symbolic things when I look at churches, because everything is a symbolic meaning, especially on holy ground. And I noticed that about the young brides. They weren't as confident as the men, and then the men were almost too confident, like they didn't even hold the door open for a lady. So I did notice that about that church. And all right. And David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days. Yeah, that's why their boys were stupid. I mean, they weren't stupid, but they'd rather hold the door open for a woman than a bride. One roach. And it says, it says in this passage, Saul had had a soldier from him in this church. But anyways, and David answered the priest and said unto him, Of a truth, a woman hath been kept from us about these 3 days, since I came out, and there were vessels of young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sanctified this day in the vessel. So the priest gave him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there but the shrew bread that was taken from before the Lord, and put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Now a certain man of the servants of Saul was there that day, detained before the Lord, and his name was Dog, an Edomite, the chiefest of the herdmen that belonged to Saul. Sorry, I love visiting churches, but I have to walk through like no, and then everyone has a heyday. But okay. And David said unto Amalek, and is there not here under thine hand spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business requires haste. And the priest said, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, there is none like that, give it me. And the priests, like, they were very, very good people. Like, when they acknowledged me, they're like, hey, what happened to your lip, you know? And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. I mean, they really tried to get me to, break my oath. But I mean, that's what one little roach does. I mean, unless they were just like big gym leaders and they're like, hey, you want my badge, you better earn it, There's a lot of theories out there. Okay. And the servants of Amish said unto him, is not this David the king of the land? Did they not sing one to another, or of him and dances, saying, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s? And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. And I wasn't afraid. I was just like, oh, what's going on? Like, crazy things were going on. Crazy things. And, like, somehow the pastors mysteriously evaporated right after the service. And my dad's like, hey, where'd everyone go? And I'm like, hey, why aren't there any black people here? And he's like, there was one black people there. There was one black person there. I'm like, oh, one. And it was an interesting service. Okay. And David laid up these words in his heart, and was sore afraid of Achish, the king of Gath. And he changed his behavior before them, and feasted himself mad in their hands, and scrambled on the doors of the gate, and let his spittle fall down upon his beard. Then said Achish unto his servants, lo, ye see the man is mad, wherefore them have ye brought him to me? And I performed a pretty big miracle at that church. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone was like, what? Jesus? Like, we saw angels in the room. We saw just magnificent spirits in that room. But anyways, have I need? I mean, and usually when that happens, people know, like, you're the chosen one, It was kind of like people were like, he was having fun. But I was like, what? It was fun. Okay. Have I need of mad men, that ye have brought this fellow to play the mad men in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? And that's just chapter 21. That was my dad has a lot of fun with that, but I'm usually the one like, what, are y'all crazy? And the brides are usually like, you're good, girl, you're good. Like, they're testing you, and I'm just like, I'll forget. It's fun, let's just say that.